Well, good morning and welcome to the Wisdom of the Soul from Southern California. My name's Michael Benner, and this is a presentation of the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. And if you're here with us live, that's great. We're going to do an opening meditation. And of course, we'll have some Q&A during the last 20 minutes or so of the class, a little over an hour from now, total of 90 minutes. Now, we do podcast this, but we edit out the Q&A, and I also pull out the meditation. So join the live Zoom class here on Sundays if you can to get the whole thing, or the YouTube, the video on the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School YouTube channel is unedited, so you get the whole thing there too. So whether it's a podcast and available wherever you get podcasts, we're on all player apps and aggregators and directories, or the YouTube channel. But if possible, join us here live when you can. On YouTube, if you'll subscribe, you'll get a notice every time a new class is posted. So subscribe, like, and comment if you would. The podcast, you can leave a review, which we'd appreciate on the Apple podcast. There's also a podcast service called Podchaser that encourages reviews. But want you to know that's available, and it's search for Ageless Wisdom Mystery School, not Wisdom of the Soul. This is the class, but the larger project, the school, is Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Google it. If there's a past show and you don't know, gosh, what was the number of that show? When did that show? Just Google Ageless Wisdom Mystery School and a keyword, and you might be surprised. They tend to pop up. Today we're going to pick up where we left off last week. I had hoped to cover not only the layers and levels of consciousness, but the states in which they express themselves. But we got about halfway through, so I'm going to pick up on that today, the states of consciousness, states or levels of awareness. And then I want to talk a little about the powers of the mind. I'd like to talk about the relationship of the conscious mind to the unconscious mind. It's a very simple model, and I think you'll find it really valuable. It's sort of like, oh, my Lord, why didn't anybody ever tell me this? It's so simple. What is the unconscious? And how are these two different minds? And what is the subconscious? Is that the same as the unconscious? And what about references to the pre-conscious? What in the world is the pre-conscious mind? Hey, gang, it's simpler, way simpler than you might expect, and we'll lay that out for you in a real enlightening way, I believe. So, again, thanks for joining us, and if you will assume the position, we'll do an opening meditation here. So, if you're in a chair, you want to sit up, not rigid, but sit up straight, shoulders back, lift your chin a bit, put your feet flat on the floor. If you're sitting on a meditation pillow, cross-legged, that's fine too. And close your eyes and settle into your body. Just feel yourself in your body. Move your awareness from the head, where it usually dwells, behind the eyeballs, in between the ears. Just form the intention to move that awareness down into your physical body and feel yourself in your torso, in the heart area. Though notice, you could move your awareness to the soles of your feet. You could, just by creating and sensing a letting go feeling, relax your feet. And then let that feeling move up into the calves and through the knees into the upper legs. And although you're already relaxed, see if you can't feel just a little more letting go. Feeling safe and relaxed. And imagine that feeling of safety and relaxation, like a gentle warmth, begins to float up through the core of your torso, relaxing your abdomen and lower back, and then feel that letting go in your tummy and your middle back. You're just telling your physical body that it's safe. Coming up into the rib cage and upper back, create and sense a letting go feeling. Just entertain for a moment the idea that all the organs in that rib cage are becoming more efficient and more effective as they relax. Heart, lungs, kidney, liver, gallbladder, spleen. Just feel a letting go. As you move into the upper shoulders and the neck, it may be more difficult to feel a letting go, but pause there for a moment. Imagine someone who cares about you and who has strong hands massaging your neck and shoulders. Let's just pause for a minute. And the feeling you're pretending or just making it up, well, that's exactly the right feeling. You can even imagine a second pair of hands inside your body, massaging your neck and shoulders from within, as well as those strong but gentle hands, creating a physical letting go feeling. And imagine that feeling flowing, again, like a gentle warmth down into your arms, through your elbows and forearms, a letting go feeling, into the palms of your hands and the back of your hands, and all the way down to the tips of your fingers and thumbs. If you lift your awareness to the space around your ears, you can actually feel this space sag or droop as you relax your scalp. I've always found it fascinating that we can carry so much tension in such small muscles in the scalp that when you form the intention to let go, you actually feel it in the space around your ears, don't you? And across your forehead. And of course, your eyes are already closed and your eyelids relaxed. Let that letting go feeling flow into your cheeks. And the jaw, oh my goodness. The hinge on either side of the jaw, where it meets the skull. Imagine relaxing the jaw. And the tongue. Let the tongue be wherever it is. With a little imagination, you can even relax the grip of your gums on your teeth. Imagine the tiny little capillaries and the slightly larger veins and arteries dilating as the muscles in your body relax. So the blood moves with less resistance, and nervous energy flows with less resistance. Then you free yourself up to feel safe and relaxed. Not only does feeling safe and relaxed promote a sense of freedom and peace, but it's a wonderful upward spiral that those peaceful, loving feelings generate more relaxation and a sense of safety that encourages the brain to light up the executive functions of the frontal lobes. This is where we're most intelligent. The highest brain functions are enabled and empowered, amplified and accelerated effortlessly as the brain begins to realize just how safe and relaxed you are. The brain sees your eyes are closed, realizes your breathing is slow and relaxed, and experiences the letting go in the muscles. 3 clear messages that there's no danger here. And then imagine a little movie screen floating just a few inches in front of your closed eyes. And I want you to imagine seeing on that screen an image of you sitting by the seashore, looking out at the ocean. Maybe you're on the beach. Maybe you're higher up. Maybe you're sitting on a bluff overlooking the beach and the ocean. Don't work at it. Just allow it to come to you. Whatever is your point of reference, allow that to be exactly right. And in the sky, there are white puffy clouds. It's a beautiful day. And every once in a while, you see birds flying through the sky. Maybe pelicans, maybe seagulls, shorebirds or songbirds. One here, one there, maybe a flock flutters by. The birds would give you something to think about. You could begin to think about birds. The clouds could be considered, whether they're evidence of a beautiful sunny day or whether they seem to be gathering in a slightly threatening way and are darker on the bottoms. And you think, well, maybe it's going to rain. Maybe there's a storm coming in. The clouds could give you something to think about. The water itself. You could wonder at the temperature of the water if you were to wade in. That would give you something to think about. Other times you swam in the ocean or waded into the sea. That would give you something to think about. to either recall or imagine. And the boats, you could wonder at who's on all those boats. The little sailboats, the larger recreational vehicles, the massive shipping cargo vessels out at sea. Who's out there? What are they doing? It could give you a lot to think about. That's what happens in our lives. We look out from inside our heads, through our eyes. We listen through our ears. We smell and we taste and we touch. And consequently, we think. What I'd like you to do, just as an experiment, is disappear all the boats. Imagine they're all gone. And disappear all the birds. No more birds. One less thing to think about. Disappear the shoreline and the beach. So there's just ocean and sky. Disappear the clouds. Ocean and sky and nothing else. And you notice the horizontal line where the sky meets the ocean. And that's about it. Until you allow the ocean to fall away and there is only empty sky. And for a moment, the mind is empty. And you let go of your anticipation about the sky filling up again. You release your concern and feel safe in the presence of nothing but blue sky. The emptiness, the freedom from. That's what emptiness is, freedom from thought. And yet you remain. Oh, of course, the thoughts are back there knocking on the door. They want in. Let me in. There's a certain discomfort of just not being familiar with such low stimulus. An absence of reasons to think. And as you experience the emptiness and the freedom of only sky, suggest to yourself, thinking is not necessary to living. Thinking is not necessary to be aware, to be awake, to be alert, to be responsive. And as valuable as thinking is, you don't have to do it all the time. And you don't have to let your thinking run the show. Or even determine who you are. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. You're beginning to realize I am aware, therefore I am. Even without the thinking. It's sort of like teaching a little puppy to sit and stay. Training the mind in this way to feel so safe and so relaxed. And as you back away from the puppy, teaching it to sit and stay, puppy wants to jump up and follow you. And so you just repeat yourself consistently, patiently, with kindness. Sit, stay. Show the flat of your hand, the palm of one hand as you slowly back away. And little by little, perhaps over a couple of days, the puppy learns to sit and stay. And as you back away, it begins to understand that you will return. And you can disappear from the room for a few moments and come back. And the puppy learns to sit and stay. And that pleases you. That's all the puppy wanted to do, was please you. Imagine recalling our efforts to please our parents, to please our bosses and coworkers, to please the people we dated and married, to please our children. And how we tend to hold ourselves responsible if we're unable to do that. As if it would just never occur to us that we're dealing with people who on occasion become unpleasable. Part of learning to discern your own feelings as indicators of your condition is learning to allow other people to have their feelings and not need to fix them, repair them, or redeem them, even if they demand that you do so. Because you, they believe, are the cause of their upset. Let that go. And again, simply look at the empty sky. Let your mind rest in the emptiness and the freedom of nothing to think about for just a few minutes. Watch your body breathing itself. At the bottom of your nose. Be the watcher, not the breather. As if nothing were more fascinating than watching your body breathe. Who breathes you? When you let go and observe your body breathing itself, all by itself, and realize you are not the breather, but rather the watcher, what breathes you? When we relax in this way, or in the deepest levels of sleep, who breathes us? Regulates the heartbeat, digests food, and monitors the immune system. Who or what illumines and animates you? When you're deep asleep, or contemplating empty sky, who remains? What is it that remains? What is this vitality? Consider that each of us is in partnership with harmony and unity itself. Something much bigger, something organized and coordinated and beyond sense, sensation, and reason. Stand open and receptive to the vivifying essence of life, coming through you rather than from you. Form the intention to come back into the room, to imagine yourself moving slowly, effortlessly in the direction of rising up, waking up, floating up. And 3, open your eyes, wide awake now. Open your eyes, wide awake and alert, rested, refreshed. Back in the room, feeling better than before. Take a big breath and feel the letting go, stretching a little bit. Eyes open, wide awake. Welcome back. All right. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit in the Q&A later today. So let's briefly review what we went over last week about the levels or layers of consciousness, and they were 4 in number. And we did them from the outside in, so number 4 was, we sort of did it backwards. The 4th level of consciousness is the human mind. Our ability to think and feel, to problem solve, to make decisions, to do so consciously. The mind. The mind is everything. Notice we have medical doctors whose area of concern is the physical body. We have mental health specialists, psychologists and psychiatrists, and to some extent, I guess, social workers. But when we talk about mental health, that includes thoughts and emotional feelings, doesn't it? For whatever reason, we don't really have a profession of emotional health doctors or healthcare professionals. So the emotions are sort of clustered with the thoughts as the mind. That's what the mind is. The mind, perhaps even better considered, is consciousness. The mind is an extension, again, this 4th layer of consciousness itself. So I can have thoughts, even though I'm not very conscious of the thought process, or I can learn to be increasingly conscious of my thoughts, the ones that I deliberately and purposefully engender, and the intrusive thoughts that we talked about on a couple of occasions a few weeks ago, the task unrelated thinking, the monkey mind, the jabber, roof brain chatter. That's another phrase for it. The 3rd level, somewhat below the mind, is sense and sensation. Your ability to see and hear and touch and smell and taste. Below that is the store or the warehouse where all the qualities, the forms, the laws of physics, ethics and values, the conscience that not only knows right from wrong and good from bad and what you should be doing, not because an authority tells you, but because well-being is encouraging you to be virtuous and kind and loving, and those qualities are in the store, along with, again, the laws of physics and that water is wet and fire burns, and the skeleton nature, the scaffolding of physical reality, the fir tree beneath the Christmas tree, that kind of thing. Our bodies have a skeleton, but below the physical body and the physical skeleton are energy bodies. And I think it's important to consider from time to time when you hear someone talk about auras or energy fields, that these do not emanate from the physical body, as you might presume, but in fact the physical body is an emanation of the energy field that appears around it to those with the eyes to see. Come on, it's the clay of the earth. That's what your physical body is. It's the food that you've consumed that becomes clothing, or the instrument that we use, or the vehicle that gets us around from place to place. But consciousness is energy, organized as coherent fields and magnetic at that, attracting like, repelling opposites. So if you're a good person, you're going to attract good people and find people who are selfish and self-centered to be somewhat repulsive. But if you're a selfish, arrogant, self-centered narcissist, guess who you're going to attract? Narcissists love narcissists. And you'll repel the kind, loving, gentle person. And there's lots of in between, but you get the polarities here. And then the first, most primary level or layer of consciousness is the Godhead, the source, the absolute, which shines, according to the experience of many, like a inky black void that is intensely bright, like staring into the sun, except that it's not white light, doesn't appear yellow. It's just empty, bright, bright blackness, the source of which consciousness arises, and all things rise out of that, like waves on the ocean that we were just contemplating minutes ago. Just as a wave rises on the ocean and has a sense of independence and individuality and uniqueness, yet clearly is still the ocean. So too, everything in our lives rises up. A condition. A condition of energy that can manifest as a solid object, and then we see that clothing, and of course, given our level of evolution, we believe that object exists, unaware that it's our consciousness that gives it its existence. Next week, I hinted at this in the newsletter this week. A week from today, we're going to discuss a classic experiment from quantum physics called the double slit experiment, which is this amazing conclusion, this evidence, this experimental evidence that suggests that energy and matter are not only the same, but they coexist as waves and particles simultaneously. Not merely a photon, a little packet, energy packet of life, like a little Tide Pod. That's what light is. It's made up of particles of light, little photons that act like energy, but in some cases act like little particles. Well, not only photons, but even electrons, which we say, well, those are particles. Those are little tiny bits of matter, right? And I seem to remember in high school learning that the electrons rotate around the nucleus of a molecule in these energy shells, and that they're counterbalanced by one proton and one neutron. And hydrogen has one of these, and helium two, and so as we go through the whole periodic table. But whoever told you that those electrons spinning in the shells, the energy shells, are actually flashing on and off? They disappear and then they pop back into existence and then they disappear again. The whole physical world is flashing like a light bulb 60 times a second, but it's so fast you don't see the flashing. Like a movie, was it 26 frames per second in a old school movie? but it looks like smooth motion to you. You don't see the 26 still frames, and that's reality. We see it as smooth and continuous. In fact, it's flashing. Even consciousness flashes. I interviewed a professor, actually, he's the chairman of the Department of Consciousness Studies at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And he's doing research into consciousness, some amazing research. And trying to remember his name. I'll think of it in a minute. And he was saying that they'd been studying Venus flytrap plants to discern the level of consciousness in a plant, particularly the Venus flytrap, which responds so immediately and directly to the stimulus of an insect coming into the trap, and then bam, it closes like another animal might and begins to digest, having swallowed the fly. Well, how conscious is that? And he said, well, it's sort of like consciousness taking a still picture once or twice a minute. That's the consciousness of a plant. It's aware of itself once or twice, 3 times maybe, per minute. Just a flash. Whereas a human being has these flashes of consciousness at millions of times per second. And so we are more conscious, we are more aware than plants. And of course, in the middle are the animals, which are less aware than most humans. I think some animals, on occasion, are more aware than some humans, but you understand my point. Which animal are you talking about? A dolphin, a whale, a spider, a mosquito, your dogs and your cats? I've touched on self-awareness in animals in the past, may talk about it in the future again. Besides humans, there's really only 8 animals that we know of that qualify as self-aware. And the standard for that is the ability to recognize their reflection in a mirror. Isn't that interesting? That happens in humans at about 18 months of age. That a baby realizes that reflection. The baby can see a reflection in the mirror before that. It just doesn't know that's me. Roughly 18 months, that's where that ability forms in a human child. But there's only 8 animals that are ever able to do that. And as you might expect, it's like gorillas and bonobos and dolphins and whales and elephants, I think. And then the one really odd one is the crow or the magpie, which these other animals have a cortex in their brain a cap, that connects all parts of the brain to all other parts of the brain. The crow does not have that cortex, but it's still, God, they're incredibly smart, aren't they? Have you seen the YouTube videos of crows and the behavioral experiments that they have them do? It's quite remarkable. Self-awareness. So today, let's extend this into the states of consciousness, which is basically sleep, dreaming, and awake. There is sleep, there is dreaming, and there is awake. Now, a few weeks ago, we talked about brain waves. We talked about the beta, alpha, theta, delta brain waves. I acknowledged there were also such things as gamma brain waves, very high frequency, but it's hard to talk about because in the 25, 30 years, maybe more than 30 years, that brain researchers have been aware of these gamma waves, we can't really find a correlation. don't really know what they correlate to. But the lower brain waves, we clearly know from 13 to about 40 cycles per second, the so-called beta range, that's awake and alert and aware and moving around in the world. And the more stimulated we are, the higher the brainwave frequency. So when you first wake up in the morning and trundle off to the kitchen to get the coffee going, you're probably in the upper teens or lower 20s. But by the time you get a jolt of coffee, you're in the low 30s or upper 20s, low 30s in terms of the frequency or the vibratory rate of the electromagnetic waves emanating from the brain. And then if you're really panicky and stressing out and completely overstimulated, you're going to be in the upper 30s. And you know the feeling. And that's when the adrenals start pumping norepinephrine into your body and cortisol, and that's when the amygdala tends to shut down the executive function of the prefrontal lobes, and creativity and insight and understanding is destroyed and replaced by binary thinking, the either-or mentality. Boy, I hope you're hip to that. God, that can save you so much grief if you become aware of times when each of us is so stressed that we see everything in terms of black or white, all or nothing, right or wrong, and the consequential false assumption that if something is different, it must be opposite. And if anything is different, then it opposes us. Opposite, opposition, difference, opposing, anything that's not me is a threat. See the way the brain poisons, the way the amygdala poisons the whole brain? To help you survive the danger. That's how we got here. That's how we've evolved for 3 million years. Our ancestors, the ones who got frightened the most easily, and lost the nuance and the creativity in their imaginations, they're the ones that survived, and they passed that hair trigger down to us. So, God, we're so easily terrified, so easily frightened. And this is the stage of evolution that we're at. It even speaks to the political divisiveness in the world. Fear, the fear of each other, and the fear of the unknown. And, people grab Bibles and guns and cult leaders and do whatever they can to try to find some sense of belonging to something, because you've only got two choices. And you're the good side, so anything different must be the bad side. This is a pox on humanity. This is a curse. Fine for survival if you're in real danger, but it's not a lifestyle. The alpha brainwave levels below that corresponds to both a deeply relaxed wide awake state and a dreaming state. Alpha stands sort of between, in fact, this may be the best way to say it, because it does stand between the beta state of wide awake that I just described and the theta state. So from the top down, 13 cycles per second and higher is beta, wide awake. But then coming down, alpha is like 8 to 12, like 10 cycles plus or minus. And then theta, somewhat below that, would be like 4 to 8, right? 5 to 7, somewhere in there. And both alpha and theta are dreaming states. Usually when you meditate, you go from beta down into the somewhat slower alpha. And you're an alpha when the busyness of the monkey mind tends to fall away. Your thoughts begin to slow down. The gaps between the thoughts open, and you just feel safer and more relaxed. That's theta. That's alpha. If you continue to go deeper with relaxation, perhaps even on your way to sleep, and you drop now below alpha into theta, this is a state associated with what's known as hypnagogic imagery. This is where you begin to visualize. And if you see others in alpha, whether they're meditating and visualizing or asleep dreaming and visualizing in those dreams, the eyelids will sometimes bounce. This is called a REM state, for rapid eye movement. It's a good band too, REM. That's what that comes from, the REM state. So we can be in that REM state of alpha and theta and be awake, though deeply relaxed. But that's also the same level we're in when we dream while asleep. And then delta is 4 cycles or less. Anything slower than 4 cycles is delta. And this is a deep non-dream sleep. Right? Now, hundreds and even thousands of years, literally thousands of years before brainwaves were ever discovered, the ancient rishis and adepts, the sages and gurus of time out of mind, said the same thing. And it's part of the wisdom traditions and the mystical traditions that are still taught today throughout the world, particularly in the East and Middle East cultures, but in the mystical cultures of all philosophies and religions. There is an understanding that these are the 3 states: deep sleep, non-dream sleep, the sleep and dreaming stage, and then the wide awake stage. A couple of points to consider, although I'm not going to dwell on this because I just don't have much to say about it. There's not much that can be said about it, but it merits some reflection. There are many, many teachers in Vedantic philosophy, the ancient Vedas of India and the Far East, in shamanism, all around the world, including the indigenous peoples of the Americas, who have said repeatedly that deep non-dream sleep in death is the same state. That when you sleep deeply and are not dreaming, you are effectively dead. So people say, well, what is dying like? What is it like to realize that you're dead? Well, it's like waking up is what it's like. Only you wake up and find out all of this was a dream. I love that little Stan Laurel from Laurel and Hardy. That's who Stan Laurel is. That quote I put in the newsletter. How did it go? I had a dream that I was awake, and then I woke up and found out I was asleep. Yeah, the corollary between deep non-sleep, I'm sorry, let me get my words straight. Deep non-dream sleep and death is something that is discussed over and over again. And you say, yeah, but it's not death because the body is still breathing and the brain waves are still indicating vitality and the heart is still beating and all the vitals look good. And of course, there are so many experiences that we can have in deep sleep There are fortunately now sleep study labs where all manner of sleep disorders are researched and treated. Night terrors, for example. So many of the abduction phenomena that we hear around the UFO stuff is really a function of sleep disorders. I won't say all of them. I don't know that to be the case. There's more that we don't know than what we do know in this whole field of aerial phenomena, unidentified aerial phenomena. I don't want to get into all of that, but a lot of it is sleep disorders. There's something called the old hag syndrome, where people believe that they're awake, but they're in a twilight state, in a theta state most likely, still asleep, but lucid, in that you're aware of feeling, in this case, very frightened. As if, in fact, it often has racial overtones, that someone very threatening and very frightening, like some sort of, again, alien being. It could be, to an American, an alien is somebody from South America. But they could be the Greys or, aliens from another place. They have these experiences. They're widely reported. You listen to George Norrie any night of the week, you'll hear sleep disorders described as, some sort of alien encounter. Sleep paralysis. This is something that I've suffered. It can be very frightening. Where you're awake enough that you make an attempt to move, to roll over, maybe to get out of bed, you're just paralyzed. You can't move. And that's a horrible feeling. And you try to yell out to somebody to help you, and you can't yell, you can't speak. And then you try to throw your body one way or another. What researchers have found about this, I'll say, is that it almost always happens when you're sleeping on your back. And so one of the treatments, if you've ever had sleep paralysis on waking, is to do your best to sleep on your side or to sleep face down. But side sleeping, for whatever reason, seems to be a cure for that. Sleep paralysis. So, gosh, this is a huge field and sort of outside of our purview, at least today, to go any further into that. But just as we compare the deepest non-dream sleep to death and honor that the body has a vitality of its own and an innate and inherent intelligence of its own that keeps us vital and alive during those sleep states, it's the consciousness that fades in and out. We can also consider that the dreaming that we do every 90 minutes or so, most sleep cycles are a 5 or 6 minute dream every 90 minutes or so. And throughout the night, the dream period gets a little shorter and the length of the dream gets a little bit longer. But not to a great degree, only slightly. That when you wake up, why would that not also be a dream? And here's where the philosophies start to blend and intersect, and you go, oh, wait a minute, I've always heard these mystics say that life is a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. Or the mystic will say it's all an illusion, or it's a delusion. It's an appearance of a reality that is only a projection of consciousness. And you say, well, that sounds like I'm dreaming when I'm awake. Well, why wouldn't you? And so I'm offering this not as solutions or answers to anything, but as ways of helping you to outline the research that you may wish to do. I'm not demanding that you do anything, but you may wish to pursue this in reading of books and articles and abstracts, do your Google research. It's amazing how much information is available to the casual Google user. And as Google learns that you're through its algorithms that you're interested in such things, it'll start pushing your results in that direction. You'll get better and better results. And those conspiracy theories you've been checking out, those will start to fall off your, or drop to the very page 40 on your search results, right? The more you research the things that you really are interested in that are really wonderful and illuminating and positive and life-affirming and uplifting, Google or whatever search engine you use, Safari or I don't know, the old one's still around, Alta Vista, Dogpile. We had a whole bunch of them. Microsoft has a new browser too. The more you use those to look up this really interesting material, the better results you'll get. So I just want you to think in terms of consciousness in all of these different ways. And even these two models are a bit much. The idea of consciousness as the source, the creator, the absolute or Godhead, emanating out through this store or warehouse of forms and names to our sense and sensation, and then to the mind, our thoughts, feelings, and intentional behavior, our health and well-being, our attitudes and our moods. And then this other model, the states of consciousness through which our awareness expresses, or I could say the states of awareness through which consciousness expresses itself. The sleep, non-dream sleep, the sleep and dreaming, which includes, in a sense, daydreaming, right? You can daydream intentionally using your imagination, which is really a waking state, deeply relaxed waking state. And then the corollaries, the brainwave corollaries of delta, deep non-dream sleep, theta, dreaming, also with awareness, a deep trance-like state, associated in both cases with vivid imagery. Alpha, which is mild relaxation, any decent meditation will take you into alpha, or just go sit outside for 10 minutes. Watch the birds and the butterflies, and you'll be in alpha in no time, right? Or light a candle and just sit back and watch the candle dance. Do your best to think of nothing, but just watch the candle. Boy, you go into alpha right away. And then the wide awake state, where we live the vast majority of our lives focused out on these objects and struggling with a life that we believe is being done to us. Like Alice through the looking glass. Like, which side of the looking glass am I really on? Now, I'll just quickly touch on the powers of mind, because it's already a few minutes after the top of the hour. Any questions or comments that you have, if you would please just jot that down in the text box, and then Mindy can read it. I'll comment on it, or we'll ask you, if you wish, to unmute your mic and go further. Questions or comments on any of this? And let me touch on the powers of mind. The one model that I really think you'll benefit from understanding: conscious mind, unconscious mind, subconscious mind, preconscious mind. What are we talking about? Are these 4 or 5 different minds? If you don't mind. Basically, there is one mind, and that's the all that is. There's one life. There's one mind. There is one of us here. It's a universe, one thing spinning around, one dance. That's the mind, the consciousness, that all things exist within. Not only is spirit in the world, in all things, divinity immanent, it's also transcendent. So I don't want to say the opposite. The other side, the obverse, is also true. Not only is divine spirit in everything, but everything is in the one. The one is in everything, and everything is in the one. That is panentheism, immanent and transcendent. Now, each of us as individuals incarnated into form as this physical body that we carry around, this vehicle this instrument that we use to get from place to place in this world. So we get a piece of that mind, an aspect of the mind. The whole mind is available to us, and sometimes we're able to see more of it than at other times. You may have experiences of so-called ESP, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition. Called a friend of mine yesterday. He said, "Damn, I can't believe it. I was just about to call you. We hadn't talked in probably 6 weeks." I believe him. I don't think he was BSing me. I think we really were on each other's mind. I just happened to make the call before he had a chance to. And I'm sure you've noticed this. And there are countless other examples that we won't explore today. All that ESP, that precognition, clairvoyance, and now they call it remote viewing. That's all explainable and completely understandable if you realize that your aspect of consciousness is just an extension or a fragment or an element of the whole. And even that consciousness is variable. Part of the mind that we call our own, my mind, is conscious. Most of it is not. So there's no level at which there's more than one mind. It's just how much of it do we have access to? And how much of the mind, the totality of the absolute of God, do we have access to? How much of our own mind do we have access to? Birthdays generally tend to be big days. How many of your birthdays can you even remember? How much of your life that at the time seemed so important and so dramatic or traumatic, so significant and meaningful, has faded to the point you can't even recall most of it. It's just not even available. Is it stored somewhere? Yeah, it's in your mind. It's in the one mind. But we don't have conscious access to it. So the consciousness is typically, what's the word I want? Not displayed, but thought of as the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg may be huge, it may be enormous, but it's about 86% of the iceberg. Most of it is underwater, it's submerged, and so it is with the part of the mind that we call the individuated mind, the conditioned mind of a given individual. It's more or less available, the unconscious to the conscious. Subconscious is just another word for unconscious. It's a word that is used commonly in everyday language. It's not really the scientific term. Technically, the subconscious is the unconscious. There is something in a lot of psychology, a lot of the literature about a preconscious mind, which is a set of information, some insight or understanding that is moving from the unconscious into conscious awareness, but it hasn't quite arrived. It's like in the on deck circle, waiting to come up to bat. It's in the wings, about to come out on stage, and you can feel it. Sometimes, sometimes you can feel this thought or this feeling. Does a thought have a feeling, or is it a feeling? This is where thoughts and feelings intersect and overlap somewhat. Thoughts can be accompanied by feelings, and of course, feelings can trigger thoughts. But there's a sense, there's something formulating that I can't quite put my finger on, and I can't really get my brain around. I can't give it words yet, but I feel it. And then maybe it'll just pop into your awareness like that all of a sudden. Oh, my God, I just realized what it was. I just had a good idea. Thoughts that arrive full blown. This is intuition. It's the term is not commonly used, but if you ever run into preconscious, that's what that's a reference to. Again, subconscious, that just means unconscious. So there's the conscious, there's the unconscious mind, part of which is conscious, the tip of the iceberg. And the more stressed and tense we get, the less conscious we are of what's available in the unconscious. And as we learn to relax and even meditate and contemplate formally, it's as if we get greater conscious access to the storehouse of the unconscious mind.
Michael?
Yes.
Jeff has an interesting question that goes right into your topic. He says, what benefit can be derived from entering into each of these states? And I was wondering, how do we facilitate entering into the different ones?
Wonderful. Let me just say, one way of thinking about this relationship of the conscious mind, the tip of the iceberg, to the rest of it, the unconscious, is as if there's a valve. And that stress, tension, anxiety, frustration, irritation, fear, by any name, tightens that valve, closes off the connection, makes us less conscious and more unconscious. This is not limiting ourselves to conscious means awake and unconscious means asleep or in a coma. It goes way beyond that. When, on the other hand, we learn to breathe and let go and relax, like a formal meditation or reflection exercise, that valve dilates, it opens. And so the flow of information between the conscious and the unconscious is greatly enhanced. And it's a two-way street. So by relaxing and opening the valve, not only is there less resistance to this enhanced flow of information, memory, insight, understanding, realization, epiphany coming from the unconscious into the conscious. But relaxation, because it opens that valve, also makes us more amenable to suggestion. We learn quicker. Learning is accelerated. It takes fewer repetitions to understand something, fewer exposures to gaining insight beyond what you already know, and even remembering so that you can recall later and integrating that information. Comprehension is enhanced in both directions, you see. That's the primary benefit. Hopefully I'm addressing your question here. That's the primary benefit of relaxation, is we lower the resistance to these two minds, or two aspects of mind, conscious and unconscious, communicating, So we get more insight and understanding from the unconscious into the conscious, but we're also facilitating the ability of the conscious to guide and instruct, suggest, or even command the behavior of the unconscious mind. So if I sit here in normal consciousness, awake, alert, distracted, stressed out, and I try to lower my blood pressure with my willpower, I'm not going to be successful. But if I close my eyes and relax, breathe, let go, and visualize in my mind's eye, muscles relaxing, arteries dilating, I can significantly affect my blood pressure. And same with memory. The harder I try to remember, the more it eludes me. Until most of us get to a point of saying, oh, I forget. I don't know. Never mind. I'm a moron. I'd forget my head if it wasn't screwed on, and all this self-deprecating stuff that just, the brain goes, okay, we can do that. We'll destroy your memory even more. You have tip of the tongue phenomena. Just say, I'll remember in a minute. And what happens? A minute later, pops right into your head, you see. So let me ask you again, Melinda, to restate that question so I can address it more directly.
Sure. What benefit can be derived from entering into each of these states?
Well, the wide awake state obviously is for dealing with the external world. Any threat, any danger, any struggle. Probably the most dangerous thing any of us does on a regular basis is drive a car. So no sleeping, no napping, no meditating in the car, right? You're in danger. You're deliberately putting yourself in a dangerous situation. And so you need these higher brainwave states to focus out in the world. That's not a time to be daydreaming or trying to learn to manage your emotions or reconcile your traumatic childhood. It's like, put on the blinders and drive the car. So that's what beta wide awake is for, obviously, the external world. And then sleep and dreams, that's still debatable, the benefits of sleep and dreams. But the more you consider that this is an abstraction of the solar self, that we need to spend roughly a third of our experience in this world in deep non-dream sleep for the physiological or the physical revitalization. We call it rest. And the body heals at an accelerated rate. All kinds of wonderful things happen in sleep. Short-term memory moves to long-term memory in sleep. I'm just not an expert that I could go much further than that. But if you don't get sufficient sleep, you suffer. I think that's clear. What may not be clear, but is true, according to a lot of research, if you don't get enough dream time, you will begin to hallucinate and in time experience a psychic break with reality. People are allowed in these experiments to sleep as much as they want, but every time they begin to dream, they're awakened or aroused by the attendant, and then allowed to go back to sleep. So they get a full 8 hours or more of sleep, but they're being robbed of dream time. 3 days, they're off the rails. They're hallucinating. They don't know where they are. They don't know what day it is. They don't know their name. They forget what they're doing. So not only do we need the regenerative and restful aspects of sleep, we need that dream time as well. And we're only 100 years into researching this stuff. It's only been 100 years that we've even had instruments to measure brainwave frequency. So stand by for more of that, or do what I've not yet done, read further on it. So I guess that's the best way to answer your question. And then these in-between states of alpha and theta, what are they good for? Well, alpha, gentle relaxation, meditation, again, gives us more access to the unconscious, integrates the conscious and the unconscious. The conscious can remember more and understand more easily and is more likely to gain the insight through relaxation of information that exists in the unconscious. Think of the epiphanies that we get with intuition, where a thought will arrive full blown, already conceived, already thought out, already considered, but at an unconscious level, so that it just bursts into your awareness, already formed out of whole thought. Well, that's pretty far out. When we did the meditation today, and I said, at the deepest part, who breathes you? Well, you could make an argument that it's the autonomic nervous system that breathes me. What a dumb question, Michael. I'm being breathed by my autonomic nervous system. Yeah, but again, metaphysically, to go a little deeper, is to consider that we are spirit, we are energy before we are matter. We're energy wearing matter, material bodies. And there's a struggle there. There's a conflict between spirit, which is virtuous and refined and good and true and beautiful and loving, and the animal body that wants what it wants and is selfish and self-centered and terrified. And quick story, I was taking an Uber to the airport once, and my Uber driver was a bit of a religious zealot and sensed that I might be open to her pitch. And so she was going on with a religious rant and began to talk about how God hates this and God hates that. And I said, are you sure? And she said, yeah. And I said, why? And we talked about it a little further. And I had read somewhere that God hates is in the Bible 48 times, but I'm not sure that's true. I don't even remember where I heard it. But if you're with religious fundamentalists, I'm sure you've heard this whole idea that God hates this, God hates that. I said to her, hate is anger. Does God get angry? She said, oh yeah, definitely. This angers God, that angers God. So we basically went over the same material. God hates because God is angry. And I said, has it ever occurred to you that all of that is hurt? That we get angry when we've been hurt. And we hate because we've been hurt. And all of this, hatred, anger, hurt, is rooted in fear. You're telling me God is afraid and becomes angry and hateful because he is hurt? And the whole rest of the drive to the airport was completely silent, except when we got there and we were cordial to each other. But that had never occurred to her. She's going out and teaching angry, hateful, wrathful Old Testament God, thunder and lightning, and I can smell the sulfur now, right? You have to ask yourself. To be told that you are made in the image of God, that which is divine, is not the same as making God in the image of a human being and projecting all of your emotions, especially your negative emotions, on this divine, perfect Godhead, this absolute source of all that is good and true and beautiful. She's just not conscious. She was programmed to believe what she believed and just what didn't, wasn't using her prayer and meditation to discover herself and understand herself. That's why we hear all these admonitions. I sought to understand God and I found myself. I sought to understand myself. I found God. Know thyself. There's no wisdom, no other people. Know yourself. Why do you get angry? Why do you hate? What are you afraid of? It's the only thing that's worked for me. That's where you go to become more loving. I know it's odd that I would have to explore my anger and my fear, my hatred and animosity in order to find love. But that's how you do it. The only way out is through. You have to face it. I don't know that answers the question, but that's my best shot at it right now. What else, Melinda?
Oh, I wondered if you had a quick synopsis on how biofeedback works to voluntarily alter our brain waves and tapping.
Well, tapping, I can't really speak on. I think a lot of tapping is just hypnosis. It's relaxation and expectation. This even touches on placebo effect, which is certainly real enough. If we expect we're going to get better, we're going to get better faster, say from a health condition or even just nervous anxiety. If we anticipate that it's going to go away, it will. If we expect that it's going to be prolonged and maybe get worse, that's likely to happen too. So you reap what you sow. You go where you look. You get what you expect. If you argue for the negative, the unconscious mind only says yes. So, all right, you're stupid? All right, we can do that. You have a bad memory? Never been any good at this? Oh, I couldn't play a musical instrument. I can't sing. Unconscious mind goes, okay, you want that? We'll put your attention there. We'll give you whatever you want. The ground will grow whatever seed falls into it. The wind blows, the bird flies over, and whatever seeds drop into the soil, whether they're beautiful trees and fruits and vegetables and flowers or thorns and briars and brambles, the earth goes, okay, I'm fertile. I'll whatever you plant, I'll grow. Nourish it, cultivate it. Work with me, we'll grow, whatever. I'm not going to judge. Only the conscious mind judges. The unconscious mind doesn't judge. It goes, okay, whatever. Conscious mind knows the difference between real and imagined. Unconscious mind can't distinguish a difference between real or imagined. You want to make your dreams come true? You have to use deep relaxation to access the unconscious. Plant the seed in there. It'll grow. I forgot what I'm addressing. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the clock here, and perhaps I shouldn't, but you wanted a synopsis of what was it, Mindy?
Oh, yeah. I think tapping partly works by the gate theory of the brain, almost like a TENS, that it blocks the other noisier impulses, and there's a rhythmicity to it. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon to try, but I just have never quite understood biofeedback.
Oh, well, biofeedback is just giving you some information that you can use to, in most cases, become more relaxed. So a little GSR meter, which I've used a lot over the years, especially with people who had a problem meditating, that's galvanic skin response. Well, as you relax, your skin dries and becomes less conductive. Stress and tension causes a very slight increase in the moisture on your skin, which enhances conductivity, and so the GSR meter senses that. So you put the meter on your fingertips and you adjust a baseline and it's going beep, 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 audio feedback, sometimes flashing light, visual feedback, biofeedback. And as you relax, the beep, 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 beep begins to slow down. And you go, oh, I must have done something. So, wow, that letting go in the lower legs really helped. Maybe I'll let go in the upper legs and the beep, 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 beep. Oh, I'm doing it. And then you open your eyes and it goes beep, 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 beep. And you go, oh, whoa, that didn't work. That extra stimulus is just, you know, raising my brain waves, although the corollary again here is the conductivity of the skin. And they're handy and they're cheap, and there's even biofeedback cards that measure the warmth of your fingertip based on whether the capillaries are dilated in relaxation or constricted in a high stress state. And it's just giving you information, feeding back a feedback loop that helps you do what you want to do. In most cases, become more relaxed so that your conscious self gets greater access to the powers of your unconscious mind. And then the psychic phenomena, because you're all sharing on some level of mind, including the remote viewing and precognition. And then, of course, the whole idea of mysticism is to follow that love, that peace, to its source until you swoon in the bliss and the ecstasy of the divine. But that's a high bar. Most of us will settle for just a little peace of mind.
Patrick does have something to add.
Yes, Patrick.
Okay, well, this isn't really a question. I just wanted to share it because so I had this dream a couple years ago, and it was that I had died, right? The body had died, but all of a sudden I was in this like a bubble, but it was so small, it was just atoms, and it was hundreds of these bubbles just floating up off of the body, almost like a rocket ship when it takes off from Earth, and the Earth just fades away. But it was a floating sensation, and it didn't matter which bubble I was still identifying as this is me, and I'm not dead. I'm alive, and I realized that the atoms don't die; they just continue to live in a different form. But when I woke up from this dream, it was like it was very clear, and the first time I think maybe in my life there was no fear of death because death didn't exist. It was just this conscious life, like every atom had the consciousness, and it wasn't Patrick anymore. It was just me. Like it didn't matter. I would be me in any one of these bubbles.
What was happening in your life at the time that may have stimulated that dream?
I can't say. I don't know. I've thought about it. I don't know if there was any one thing that I could point out.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a really valid experience. And that conforms with a lot of NDE literature, near-death experience literature of people dying and coming back or experiencing. You may have not died. You may have just experienced that separation of identity as the soul in form, but the soul also is above and free of form. So that may have been you gaining the perspective of the so-called oversoul. This is one of the great heresies for which thousands, hundreds of thousands have been burned at the stake, slaughtered, tortured, for believing in not just reincarnation, but the existence of an oversoul. that the soul indwells only as an extension of the overshadowing soul, that you are an emanation or an extension of a soul that lives above and free of form. In other words, your soul is already in heaven. Where else would it be? And the misinterpretation that we get from Constantine and his bishops in the 4th century AD, 4th century after Christ, was that the soul indwells, is manufactured upon conception, tucked inside, indwells, is filled with sin because Eve ate the apple, and that soul needs to be redeemed if it's to go to heaven. Well, you can see the threat if other Christians say, no, my soul's already in heaven, and an aspect of it has incarnated, extended itself into form as this individual that I see on my license plate or in the mirror when I shave in the morning. So this idea of the oversoul, I mentioned transcendentalism and Emerson and Thoreau and Whitman a few weeks ago. Emerson's poem or essay about the oversoul is very enlightening along these lines. You can check that out too. You may have just gained a perspective of the soul looking down on Patrick. Love to talk to you more about that.
Interesting. You know, like you said, how many birthdays do you remember? Well, how many dreams do you really remember? This one stuck with me, and it was really good because, like I said, the relief of fear was amazing, and I hang on to it because I'm harvesting the fear back daily, you know, and I try to reject it, but keep saying,
meditate in that place. Go to that place in a meditation. Redream it.
Yeah.
Redream it in a daydream. Go there and affirm all of that. Sure, that's wonderful. You'll survive it. You'll survive this lifetime like you survived all the others. You know. Okay, that's it. That's all the time we got. In fact, I've run over again. Forgive me. My apologies. Thank you, people. Namaste. Aloha. Salam. Would you please unmute and say goodbye to your friends and classmates? And we'll see you next week. We're going to talk about the amazing double slit experiment. If you want to Google quantum physics double slit, you can read a little about it, maybe find a YouTube on it. And I'm telling you, this is where science and spirituality reinforce and come together in a remarkable way. This extraordinary, now classic, double slit experiment from quantum physics. Whether existence is energy or matter is all a function of conscious awareness. Who's looking? Who's watching? You're going to love it. So join us next Sunday. If you'd unmute and express your good wishes to everybody, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. I really learned
Seeing
something.
everybody.
Michael, thank you. Thank you, Melinda.
See you next week.
Everybody have a wonderful week. Take care.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.